everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to be making an emulsified solution. And what does that mean? That means we are making lotion. So I used to make lotion all the time, but what I like to do is I like it to make it fresh to order. So because I didn't sell it very often, so whenever somebody wanted it, that's when I would make it. Now, making something like this is actually pretty easy, but it does require some investment in different ingredients and materials. So for an emulsified solution to work, basically what that means is that you have an oil mixed in with a water. So let me give you an example. So like mayonnaise is an emulsification. Conditioner is an emulsification. Obviously lotion is one as well. So you use an emulsifying agent to bind the water and the oil together to make this creamy solution. So what I have here is I'm going to be making a shea butter lotion, which this is my shea butter. I use it in soap, but you can also use it in lotion, conditioners, whatever. But I'll be making it with this shea butter. It's from Essential Depot. These are unlabeled baggies because I like to simplify things and condense things, and this is kind of what I do, but I know what each thing is. So for this lotion, I actually have two different kinds. Well, this one isn't in a different bag. Two different kinds of emulsifiers. This one is called Soft and Silky, and the ingredients are cetearyl alcohol and cetareth 20, and this is just regular emulsifying wax, which usually has like a polysorbate in it. So two different blends, and it's really nice to have those two because each ingredient imparts their own property. But then as additional things, obviously I'm going to add water, but I'm also going to add glycerin because glycerin is great for humectant, like moisture properties. This is actually a starch, so the starch is meant to, if there's just maybe a little bit too much water in there, like I didn't measure it 100% accurately, which a lot of times you don't because your scales aren't 100% accurate. It's they're not being calibrated all the time, so it's not something that's 100% accurate. So usually what I use is the starch to kind of bind everything together and thicken it up. And then, oh, there's a hole in my bag. And I use a little pinch of citric acid. So that's what this little baggie is. It's just citric acid. I don't have to use a ton, which is, you know, why I don't keep a ton around. But basically this I use to kind of pH balance the water because pH balancing is very important for your preservative. So my preservative that I'm using here is called Liquid Germall Plus. This does not have the parabens in it. You can see the ingredients is propylene glycol, diazolindyl urea, and isopropanol butyl carbamate. Granted, those are really hard to pronounce words, but they're completely safe chemicals that preserve and prevent bacterial growth in your product, which I know people, they make a big stink about like having chemicals in their stuff, but I personally would rather have harmless chemicals that preserve my solution than have bacteria in my stuff. So this is what I use. There's also something called Optifen, which I used to use, but I didn't find it very as effective. But a lot of times with these preservatives, they require that pH balance in order to actually be functional. So we need it to be functional, which is what the citric acid is for. And this is another ingredient that I sometimes like to add to my lotion. It's called cyclomethicone, and it is a silicone. And a lot of people raise stinks about these as well. I can make it with or without this. I choose to do this batch with it because I do feel a difference when I have this versus not having it in there. It's a lot more moisturizing, in my opinion, than not having it in there. So let me go get my scale and we'll start measuring these things out. Alrighty, so I have my handy dandy silver scale. This one actually measures in ounces and grams and goes up to 5,000 grams, or 5 kilograms basically, and I'm not going to go up that high. So I'm going to make a 25-ounce batch. So the first thing I like to add is the water because it's the bulk of the formulation. Let me tear this scale. I'm going to do it in ounces. And this is just distilled water. It's the same kind of water I use for soap making. And this requires, in a 25-ounce batch, this is going to require 20 ounces of water. So a lot of people might be upset that most of their formulation is water, but trust me, it's important because an emulsified solution, the whole point is to give you moisture, and you get most of your moisture from water. So lotion with all this water here acts as a vehicle to get the water into your skin. So you want this water in here. If you just put straight water on your skin, it might feel nice for a minute or two, but then it dries out and then you feel dry. Whereas if you have this emulsifier in here, you're also kind of letting in the oil, which gives it more moisture, or locks it in, basically locks that water in. All right, 20 ounces of that. I'm going to go ahead and add my citric acid, and I kid you not, I only add a pinch. There we go. So I don't even measure that. And I'm going to add my emulsifying wax. So my total emulsifier that I'm supposed to use in here is about 7%, which comes out to about 1.75 ounces. But I like to split it between these. So my soft and silky is really nice, and I like to use more of that. So I'm going to need 1.75 ounces here. So I'm going to add 1 ounce of this and 0.75 of the other. So let's do this very carefully here. Because once you have the water in there, it's hard to... I mean, I guess you could weigh your oils first and then your water. Usually I do, but I don't know. I guess I got to talking. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So let's add 0.75 of this. Perfect. All right. Okay, so I have my citric in here, and I have my emulsifying wax in here. And what I need to do here now is let it kind of melt. So because I'm using shea butter and not a liquid oil, I'm going to go ahead and measure my shea butter as well. Because I want to let it melt along with the emulsifying wax. So I'm using a total of 10% of oil in here. So I'm going to need 2.5 ounces of shea butter. Let's see. That's only 0.28. Yeah. It's a lot more oil. So oil is less dense than water, so it weighs less whenever you plop it in here. So you'll see that I'm actually adding quite a bit of oil, or butter, I guess, for sake. Just a little bit, half an ounce more. A little bit more. All right, perfect. Okay. And now my hands are covered in shea butter. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put this on like a double boiler and let this melt. And I will be back for the rest of the ingredients. All right, so I have my concoction all melted, and I've got my oils in there, my emulsifying waxes, and my water. My citric acid is dissolved in there. So you can see that everything is kind of separated. It's just melted right now. So we've actually got to get the not particles, but the molecules to mesh together, to come together. So it's not enough to just stir it. So look, see, if I stir it here, it starts to become creamy and milky, but let it sit and the oil just comes right back to the surface. So what we've got to do is we've got to give it a little bit of a kick, and that's what I use my stick blender for. So you've seen me use this for soap making, and it works really well for lotion making as well. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this. So in order to mix this, I use pulsing motions instead of just straight mixing, because if I just straight mix it, the intensity of the stirring is just going to flop my solution out of the bowl. So I also take my spatula and place it opposite where the whirling motion is. So if you watch here really quick, I'm just going to pulse. It doesn't need much, but the whirling is going counterclockwise. So I'm using my spatula to kind of stop it from going too crazy. Okay, and while I've got this stirring, I'm going to go ahead and add my non-temperature sensitive ingredients, which would include the cyclomethicone and the glycerin. So I have pre-weighed these out, and here's my cyclomethicone. Okay, and here's my glycerin. Glycerin is really thick. And with those ingredients, it's okay not to be completely precise because, I mean, they spread really well. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. So basically I measured out, I needed 0.75 of the glycerin. I measured 0.78 so that when I poured it in, I would still have about what I need, but it's okay if it's off by like 0.1 or 0.2. So anyway, I'm gonna continue mixing. Okay, now I'm going to add a little pinch of my starch, just a little pinch. I don't even measure this either. Just a little pinch there. Okay. And I'm also going to add my fragrance at this point. So if you look at the size of this batch, it's not very big. So I'm not going to put a ton of fragrance. Oh, real quick. This is called Blue Sugar. This is from Nature's Garden, maybe? I can't remember where I got it from, but I'm only going to put about 3 mil, or well, maybe only 2 mils in here. And then I'll go from there because you don't want this to be overpowering. You want to have a nice light fragrance, but you don't want it to be overpowering and give you a headache. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up and see what I got. Okay, one thing I think I should mention here is that temperature is really important for your formulation here because I have not added my preservative yet, but this particular preservative is really sensitive about temperature. So if I add it to the formulation when it's above 122 degrees, it could inactivate the preservative, which would render it just pretty much useless. So we're going to go ahead and take our temperature, and you have to kind of stir it around because if we just take surface temperature, it's not going to be accurate. So it's about 126, 27. So I got to let this go for another 5 degrees or so just to make sure that I don't inactivate that preservative. Okay, I think we are about there. We're about 123 and a half-ish. It does require some patience. But I actually have pre-measured out my preservative here in this pipette. It takes probably for a batch this size about 2 mils. This stuff is really, really thick, so it's going to leave a lot of residue behind in that pipette. Again, I don't use my scale because when you're putting it into a warm solution, the scale has trouble being accurate about it. So I usually convert what I need into mils for this. So we should be about there. Yep, we're about there. So we'll just go ahead and add this in here. One of the tricks too is you don't want to have too much preservative in here because it could be irritating. So it's good to err on the mid-range of whatever the requirements are for that. So for this one, I think it's 0.5 to 1%. I usually do about, 0.5 to 0.7 or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this around a bit to mix it in there a little bit better. I feel like the fragrance is good. It's not overpowering. It's very mild. And as it cools off, it's going to get milder because right now the steam is kind of pushing it into my face. So this is a nice creamy, this is where you want it to be. It's not separating, it's staying intact. And this is a point, it's perfect because it's very fluid still too. It's perfect to pour into your bottles. So I have this bottle here that I'm going to pour it in. It's one of my bigger bottles, and I'm trying to get rid of them because I don't use them very much. But as it cools, there's going to be some shrinkage too. So if you're filling a bottle, it's not going to be a ton of shrinkage, but a little bit. I'll show you when I get there. So I like to fill my bottles all the way up to the tip because that shrinkage is going to pull that down to where it needs to be. I had an extra bottle just in case I had a ton of extra, which I do. Like some hodgepodge bottles here. And this, perfect. It fit both of these bottles just absolutely perfectly. Awesome. Alright, and I will come back once this cools and show you how nice and thick these are. So, just to give you another view. I made sure that all my ingredients were in there. I added my preservative last. It's warm but not super hot, and it's going to cool down. I'm not going to put the caps on because I don't want condensation to form inside the bottle. So I'm going to leave the caps off and let it kind of, see there's already shrinkage occurring right here. Plus there's some air in there, and it's gonna rise to the top. But some people will color these lotions, but I prefer to just leave them white because I like it's so nice and like white. I like it, so I'm just gonna leave it. But yeah, so I'm gonna let that go, and then I'll come back with the finished product. All right, so I let my lotion cool for a bit. It's still a little warm to the touch, but it's a good temperature. It's already thickened up quite a bit, so I'm going to show you how thick this is here. So I'll bring this close here, and so nice. Look at that. And it's a great texture. All right. And if you want to see how well this spreads here, I've got some dry hands I can show you. It feels really nice. It goes in very well. Look how quickly that just went right in. smells really nice and just very, very faint. Nice fragrance, not overpowering. And I just love how this feels here, just to do this back and forth. It's kind of like a massage for your hands. But my hands don't feel greasy. And they just feel nice and moisturized. So, there you have it. Alright guys, here's the final product. Zooming in here on the lotion that I squirted out on the plate for you. It's got a very nice texture. I was able to bottle what I made into these two bottles. The one on the right there is about a 16 ouncer and the other's an 8. And here's just a little display close-up that I have here. And the final dressed up image is right here. Anyway, but I hope you enjoyed this video on how to make lotion. If you have any questions or comments about the process, feel free to leave a comment in the bottom. And if you liked this video, just give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you aren't already. And if you'd like to receive notifications when I post, just click on the bell. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!